Welcome to the deep dive. Today we have a really fascinating mission. We are going to decode these incredibly stubborn, psychological and spiritual barriers that keep you from actually utilizing your unique gifts.
Yeah, and we are doing this by unpacking an audio excerpt from a sermon called Gifted and Withered.
Right, which is so interesting because it uses this very ancient story to diagnose a very modern problem, which is your imposter syndrome.
Exactly. We're looking at the biblical account of Moses at the burning bush.
But, we're looking at it as a masterclass in human self-sabotage, so let's just get right into it.
I mean, it is basically the perfect diagnostic tool for the modern mind. Because, think about it, you look at Moses standing there and he's being handed this massive, historically significant mission, right?
Yeah.
And his immediate reaction is not awe, it's not acceptance. His reaction is to just instinctively build this impenetrable wall of excuses as to why he is, completely and utterly disqualified for the job.
Oh, his list of excuses is intense. I mean, he points out that his entire background is wrong. He spent his life with the Egyptians, not his own people. He worshipped other gods.
Right, he has a literal criminal record.
Exactly. He killed a man in a fit of rage over an injustice. And on top of all that, he's an older man living completely outside the Commonwealth of Israel.
So he is looking at his life, holding up his rap sheet, and just telling the universe, I am definitively not the guy.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second because it reminds me so much of a modern professional aggressively editing their own resume down to absolutely nothing before a major interview.
Oh, that is such a good comparison.
Right. You sit there looking at your accomplishments on your laptop and your brain just starts deleting them one by one. You're so hyper fixated on your perceived flaws that you convince yourself you are a total fraud before you even walk in the room.
That aggressive self-editing is exactly what is happening in the text. But what is truly fascinating here is the response to that whole litany of insecurities.
Or the lack of a response, really.
Yes. The complete lack of the response Moses is fishing for. God entirely ignores the insecurities. The past trauma, the mistakes, the stuttering, none of it gets validated.
It's just wild. The audio excerpt frames this so bluntly, too. It notes that the divine response essentially boils down to, I don't care about your insecurities.
Which is jarring, especially for us.
Oh, absolutely. Because you and I, we live in a culture that endlessly centers and dissects and analyzes our anxieties. We think that talking about our insecurity is the actual work.
Right, but this material strips all of that away. It suggests that analyzing your insecurity is actually just this highly sophisticated delay tactic.
Yeah, it's a way for your brain to feel productive while avoiding actual risk. Think about your own life for a second. Have you ever been woken up at, say, 3:00 or 4:00 in the morning with an idea that just wouldn't let you sleep?
Oh, the 3 a.m. epiphany.
Exactly. Something that just dropped into your mind, maybe a push to start a business or to help a specific person or to completely pivot your career. You feel the adrenaline, right? But by breakfast, you have talked yourself entirely out of it because your brain convinced you it was somehow outside your capabilities.
That 3 a.m. clarity, followed by the 8 a.m. rationalization, is such a universal psychological loop. The idea was profound when it hit you in the dark. But the moment the sun comes up, your conscious mind takes over.
And the conscious mind loves safety.
You crave safety. So the source material argues that to break this loop, your overactive mind has to be actively redirected away from all those abstract theories you're obsessing over.
And forced to look at something intensely, almost embarrassingly practical.
Yes. You have to move from the paralysis of abstract doubt to a tangible physical reality. And this happens in the story when Moses is asked a shockingly simple question. What is that in your hand?
And he is literally just holding a staff, like a piece of wood. It is the ultimate mundane, everyday tool.
The excerpt actually references Psalm 23 here, noting that a shepherd uses a staff simply to tap, direct, and correct the sheep. It's entirely routine. Moses probably didn't even register he was holding the thing.
Because we become so blind to the things we handle every day,
Exactly. The fundamental difference highlighted here is between living in the realm of theory and actually putting rubber to the road. Practical people, effective people, they don't sit around debating their potential. They look at the immediate tools at their disposal.
Right. So your specific gift might simply be that you are incredibly down to earth, or maybe you've survived a highly specific, painful experience, and your ability to navigate someone else through that exact same pain is the tool in your hand.
But because it feels ordinary to you, or maybe because it's tied to an uncomfortable memory, you dismiss it. You assume it has no massive value.
Okay, but here is where the dynamic shifts from comforting to kind of terrifying. Moses is told to take his ordinary, comforting staff and throw it on the ground.
And when he does, it turns into a literal snake.
Right, and Moses runs away from it. Now, hold on. I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
If the staff represents our gift, or our safe, predictable routine, like maybe a stable corporate job, dropping it and watching it turn into a literal predator seems like a terrible outcome. I mean, why on earth would you want a gift that fundamentally terrifies you?
Well, what's fascinating here is that acknowledging your actual power is terrifying. The psychology of latent potential is not warm and fuzzy.
No, not at all.
The audio notes that these gifts are often used in these implausible and peculiar ways. When you throw the staff down, you are releasing your tight, white-knuckled control over how your life is supposed to look.
Oh.
And when that latent potential is actually unleashed with a higher purpose, it becomes incredibly potent. You run from the snake because you just don't understand how powerful you actually are.
Wait, so you're saying we aren't necessarily scared of failing, we're scared of what happens if we actually succeed?
Precisely. Because if you accept how capable you truly are, you lose the comfortable excuse of victimhood.
Oh, that's heavy.
It is. You can no longer just say, well, I'm just an ordinary person, don't expect much from me. Accepting the power of the gift means accepting the crushing weight of responsibility that comes with it.
You step into an environment that demands your gift and it activates.
Right. But to reach that activation, you have to let go of the mundane, heavily controlled way you've been managing your life.
Okay, but even if you manage to accept that terrifying potential, there is usually a deeper layer of sabotage waiting for you, right? Like your history.
Always.
You look at the power of the gift and then you look at your past and you just decide those two things cannot coexist.
And this is captured brilliantly in the next symbolic moment from the sermon. Moses is given another sign. He is told to put his hand into his cloak.
And when he pulls it out, it is leprous. The King James translation that the text uses describes it as being withered like snow.
Which introduces the core paradox of this entire deep dive. This idea that you can be gifted and withered at the exact same time.
Which is such a crazy concept to wrap my head around. You can have a profound calling, this deep well of potential, but still feel fundamentally ruined by your past.
The material actually talks about the haze of worldliness and carnality.
Yeah, like you look back at your 20s, the time you wasted, the toxic relationships you stayed in, all those dumb financial decisions you made, and you view yourself as permanently corrupted. Your brain just tells you, how could anything good or pure come from me after the mess I've made?
It is the belief that your past has this radioactive half-life that permanently disqualifies your future. But the counter-argument presented is all about the sheer speed of restoration.
Because when Moses puts that withered hand back into his cloak, it is instantly restored to normal flesh.
Right. The underlying mechanism here is that restoration does not require a long, agonizing timeline of penance. It just requires absolute sincerity.
The speaker uses the parable of the prodigal son to map this out, which I thought was super interesting. The son squanders absolutely everything, ends up in a literal pig pen, and finally makes the decision to just go home.
And the second he makes that sincere return, the father runs to him. The restoration is immediate.
It's like updating a smartphone's operating system.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, the moment you hit install, the core architecture of the phone shifts instantly. The system itself is fixed, it's fully operational. But, you might still have all these corrupted files and old cache data taking up space, making you think the phone is still broken. Your situation has changed, but your mind hasn't processed the update yet.
That smartphone OS update analogy is close, but I'd argue it's actually more visceral than that. It's more like phantom limb syndrome in human biology.
Oh, interesting. Okay, unpack that. How is it like a phantom limb?
Well, with phantom limb syndrome, the diseased or damaged part of the body has been completely removed, right? The physical thread is entirely gone.
Okay, yeah.
But the brain's neurological pathways haven't rewired themselves yet. So the brain continues to send agonizing pain signals to a limb that literally is no longer there.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
The material actually brings up the older brother of the prodigal son to illustrate this exact psychological state. The older brother never left the father's house. He was sitting right in the middle of absolute abundance, but his mind was bitter, resentful, and withered.
He was physically safe, but mentally agonizing over a perceived injustice.
Exactly. So the physical reality is restored, but the mental map is still drawing borders around old traumas.
This is why isolation is necessary, isn't it? Moses is isolated at the burning bush because his mental map needs to be forcibly rewritten before he can be sent to deal with Pharaoh.
Right. You cannot guide other people through their liberation if your own mind is still trapped in a phantom pain of your past mistakes.
Okay, so let's say the past is cleared. You recognize the phantom limb for what it is. What does the anxious brain do next? Because it's not just going to give up.
Oh, definitely not. It immediately finds a brand new target to obsess over. It stops attacking your past, and it starts attacking your present abilities.
Specifically, how you measure up against everybody else in the room. The comparative trap.
Exactly. Moses, having run out of historical excuses, pivots to complaining about his current skill set. He protests that he is not eloquent.
He literally says he is slow with speech. He is essentially saying, okay, maybe I'm restored, but I just don't have the flashy, impressive talents that this job clearly requires.
And the divine response is just a masterclass in shifting perspective. Who made man's mouth? Who makes the deaf or the mute?
The point made in the audio is that if you genuinely, objectively needed a highly specific, polished skill like eloquence to complete your life's mission, it would be given to you in a New York minute. It would just be instantly available.
Because the obsession with eloquence is an obsession with the wrong tool. Moses is staring at a hammer, complaining that it isn't a paintbrush.
Yeah.
Eloquence was never his gift, and more importantly, it was never a requirement for the mission in the first place.
To really drive this home, the excerpt shares this brilliant anecdote about a pastor's retreat.
Oh, the 60-year-old pastor story.
Yes. So the speaker is at this retreat, and this older 60-year-old pastor pulls him aside. And this older man confesses this deep, intense insecurity. He had been listening to the speaker and was just completely mesmerized by his big vocabulary, his smooth delivery, his absolute eloquence on stage.
And he felt inadequate.
Exactly. The older pastor felt totally inadequate because he didn't have that flashy, stage-ready gift. But the twist in the story reveals how poorly we judge value. By the end of that retreat, nobody was talking about the young, eloquent speaker. Everyone was profoundly impacted by the older pastor.
And the mechanism behind that impact is so fascinating. The older pastor wasn't giving grand speeches. He was just waking up at 4 or 5:03 in the morning, walking quietly around the house saying, "Thank you, Jesus."
Wow.
It was the deep, undeniable gravity of his sincerity and humility that actually moved people. People respect what is natural and tangible over flashy insecurities.
And see, here is where it gets really interesting, because this cuts right to the bone of our modern culture. We are utterly obsessed with building a brand. We covet the visible, metric-driven talents like the smooth pitch, the perfect social media presence, the massive vocabulary.
We think those are the gifts that actually matter.
Yes. Meanwhile, we entirely undervalue these invisible superpowers like sincerity, consistency, resilience, and genuine character. We honestly just think sincerity is boring.
Well, we think it's boring until pressure is applied. Eloquence is a visible metric, sure, but character is an invisible metric that only reveals its structural integrity under extreme stress.
That leads to the fundamental rule presented in the text, which is your gift makes room for you, but your character is what keeps you there.
The gift opens the door. A flashy, highly visible talent might get you an invitation into the room with highly influential people. It acts as a phenomenal marketing tool. But if your structural integrity is compromised, like if you lack character, if you are arrogant, unreliable, or try to cut ethical corners, those same influential people will identify the fraud immediately.
Because they've seen it a million times.
Right. They will calculate that your flashy talent is just not worth the collateral damage of your poor character, and you will be removed from the room just as fast as you entered it.
Because the people who actually sustain success in those rooms are there because their character makes them trustworthy, not just because their talents make them entertaining. Trust is the actual currency.
Perfectly said.
So if we synthesize the journey so far, your past trauma is a phantom limb, not a disqualifier. Your lack of flashy, brand-friendly talent is a misdirection because your character is the actual load-bearing structure. Once all of these psychological and spiritual barriers are systematically stripped away, what is actually left?
Only one thing. Action. You run out of excuses, and you're basically left staring down the barrel of execution.
And the speaker's ultimate advice at this juncture is shockingly blunt.
Oh, yeah. He simply says, shut up and do it.
Which is honestly the hardest advice in the world to actually follow.
Because it completely removes the comfort of preparation. He describes this phase as a running season. This is not a season to meander, to gather more data, to read another self-help book, or to procrastinate under the guise of like getting ready.
You possess the instructions, you are holding the gift in your hand, the only variable left is forward momentum.
To explain the mechanism of how this transformation actually happens, the material brings in the famous story of water turning into wine.
Oh, right, this part was wild.
The servants are instructed to fill these large pots with water. They know for a fact that they are pouring plain water, but by the time they draw it out and serve it to the guests, it is transformed into wine.
The crucial psychological insight dropped here is the phrase, "In obedience you become."
That is a total paradigm shift. You do not experience transformation while you are sitting safely on the sidelines, analyzing the molecular structure of the water. The transformation occurs in the dark, during the risky act of carrying the pot to the table.
People always use that corporate cliche, building the airplane while you're flying it, but I think that completely misses the biology of what's actually happening here. It's not about frantically bolting pieces together in midair. It is much more like muscle hypertrophy.
Okay, how so?
Well, you don't grow the muscle by sitting on the bench reading biomechanics textbooks, waiting until you feel strong enough to lift the weight. You have to get under the bar while you're still weak.
Right, the struggle.
Exactly. The act of struggling against the heavy weight creates micro tears in the muscle fibers. The action itself is the biological mechanism that forces the tissue to adapt, repair, and become stronger. The motion creates the miracle. If you wait until you are fully prepared, you will never experience the micro tears necessary to become the person who can handle the calling.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that perfectly captures the transition from preparation to execution. The text bluntly confronts the listener with this reality. At a certain point, the only person making it difficult to use your gift is you.
Yeah.
You are the one standing in your own way, guarding the door to your own potential. The design is finished, the tools are distributed, and now you just have to bear the weight of the action.
Okay, so we have spent this time unpacking some very heavy, ancient biblical metaphors. We've talked about staffs turning into predatory snakes, withered limbs, and water transforming into wine.
Lots of theory.
Right. But how does this philosophy of using what is in your hand map onto our literal, hyper-connected modern reality? Because at the very end of the audio excerpt, there is this fascinating hard pivot. The speaker transitions from a deep theological sermon directly into a literal logistical pitch.
It is a phenomenal pivot because it grounds the entire theoretical discussion in immediate reality. The speaker announces a new logistical phase for Solo Faith Church. They are officially partnering with DoorDash and Second Harvest.
Wait, isn't it fascinating how a sermon about ancient biblical signs pivots directly into a pitch about gig economy delivery apps?
It really is, but it's the perfect embodiment of the message. They are taking local food supply and marrying it directly to modern gig economy transportation infrastructure.
They are targeting a very specific friction point, delivering food directly to the doorsteps of people who have transportation barriers, or the elderly, or people who have been habitually stuck at home ever since COVID completely altered the way we gather.
And they're actively calling on local small businesses to partner with them and donate the funds to make this operation run.
Which is the exact embodiment of putting rubber to the road. The church leadership isn't standing at the altar waiting for miraculous manna to literally drop from the clouds. They are looking at the landscape of the modern world and asking that exact burning bush question. What is in our hand right now?
Well, smartphones are in our hands, global logistics apps are in our hands, delivery algorithms are in our hands.
It's taking the sacred abstract mission of feeding the hungry and executing it with the most mundane, profane tool available. A DoorDash driver trying to make a few extra bucks on a Tuesday afternoon.
It proves that the staff doesn't have to be a mystical, glowing object. It is a corporate partnership. It is a logistics API. It is a simple financial donation from a local bakery. It is about taking the utterly boring, everyday tools of the present moment and utilizing them to execute a higher purpose.
It completely demystifies the idea of a calling. If you want to solve a problem, don't overanalyze the theology of the problem. Hire the local delivery guys who already know the fastest routes through the neighborhood.
Exactly. The mundane is the vehicle for the miraculous.
So let's pull all of these threads together and briefly recap the psychological journey we've just mapped out for you. We started by looking at the sheer paralysis of the overanalyzing mind, how we use our insecurities as a sophisticated delay tactic to avoid the terrifying responsibility of our own potential.
Then we examined the phantom limb of our past mistakes, dismantling the illusion that your history permanently leaves you withered. We saw that restoration is a matter of immediate sincerity, not a long timeline of earning your way back.
We then expose the trap of comparison, how we mask our fear, by complaining that we lack flashy brand-building talents like eloquence, while entirely ignoring that our invisible character, our deep sincerity, is the actual structural integrity that keeps us in the room.
And finally, we arrived at the inescapable biological reality of action. You cannot think your way into a new state of being. You have to carry the water. You have to lift the weight. The transformation is waiting for you inside the execution.
So what does this all mean for you? As you go back to your day, your job, your complicated life, I want you to sit with a very specific, provocative thought. If our true gifts are consistently hiding in the mundane, and if they are truly meant to be used in peculiar, unexpected ways, what is a completely unorthodox way you can apply your most basic, boring, everyday skill right now?
It demands a total audit of what you value about yourself. What if the trait you consider your absolute least impressive, the skill you were literally trying to delete from your mental resume because it feels too routine, is exactly the staff that someone else in your life desperately needs to be guided by?
That is the paradigm shift. The exact thing you think makes you ordinary is the mechanism for your impact. It is time to stop editing yourself down. It is time to stop waiting for a cleaner past or a flashier talent. The tools are already in your hand. The system is already updated. Stop overanalyzing the water and start your running season. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.